So my name is Birgit Quack and I'm the coordinator of the CLIMAG-SN project. I want to introduce myself a little bit and why I'm coordinating this project, because I'm usually doing something else. I'm a chemist from my profession, and what I'm usually doing is that I investigate natural and anthropogenic trace gases which are released from the ocean, and I go out on the ocean with research vessels. And so you see some of the cruises I conducted, some of the research ships. One of them below is now as a sea watch rescuing ship in the Mediterranean. It has been transformed last year. But why do I now coordinate CLIMAG? So no fear, I'm not going into detail. This is my usual research agenda. So I look at these gases, which are halogenated gases. They are in the ocean, and they are emitted from the ocean, coming to the atmosphere, and they take place in atmospheric chemical cycles and ozone depletion. And they come from several sources. So they come from phytoplankton, they come from chemical processes, they come from anthropogenic processes, but they also come from macroalgae. So, but during my research on macroalgae, I learned that macroalgae do not just release these gases, but they are just great and they are overlooked. And on my next slide, you see a sketch which I borrowed from a company which is in Portugal, Sea Forester. And this company was formed to restore the forgotten forests, as they call the seaweed plantations in the ocean, or the natural seaweeds in the ocean. They want to restore them because they are declining. So they are declining because of climate change, because of pollution, because of other coastal uses, but maybe possibly also already overexploitation. But on this sketch, which they produced, you see that the marine vegetation, as they refer to in general to the macroalgae, have great properties, potential, and benefits for the environment. So when you start from here, they take up nutrients, they fix carbon, and they provide oxygen. And with this, they mitigate hypoxia and eutrophication. They can add to ocean, to the mitigation of climate change and ocean acidification. And they can lead to a biodiversity increase. They protect fish. They are good for nurseries in the fish. And they provide seaweed harvest. So, and with the harvest, you can gain industrial value. So you can make a lot from the seaweed harvest. You can use it as food, as feed for fish, for animals. It has been transformed to fertilizers. It's in the planning to make energy out of it. So there is a lot of potential. And so seaweeds, the natural seaweeds which we are talking about here, have a big value to society. So they need to be protected and restored. But then on the other hand, there is, besides the natural stocks, there is seaweed aquaculture, which may also be a promising tool for the restoration and the sustainable development of coastal environments. And we had a workshop in 2019 where you already have 4 participants of CLIMAL here in the picture. You see Patrice Bremer, Florian Weinberger, Anna Fricke, who's now an associated food promoter of algae in the project, and me in the middle, and other 15 experts of European countries. And we discussed if it's possible to do something valuable with the seaweeds for the coastal areas, with the seaweed aquaculture, or it's just an expensive end-of-the-pipe technology. End-of-the-pipe technology means that you leave everything runoff and pollution coming into the ocean, and you just take it out with some measures and not reducing the source. So we discussed it. We write during 2 days for 3 different regions, and we wrote down all our ideas and concerns and whatever, and we are still in the progress of publishing the outcomes of the workshop, and these are the regions we discussed. We discussed the southern Baltic, which is suffering from eutrophication, and algae farming could be suggested to take out nutrients and there increase the coastal waters. Then the restoration of biodiversity with macroalgae farming was proposed for Madeira. We had a participant from Madeira, and we have a big biodiversity loss in the region. And then we also already discussed Dakar, the bight of Dakar, Han, which is a heavily polluted bay because we have sewage runoff, and we discussed, is it possible to make seaweed aquaculture and clean the pollution? So, and in the end, after the 2 days of discussion, we agreed that the benefits of the natural seaweeds, as you still see on the right, and the seaweed farming can overlap if you do it right, but you need a lot of knowledge. Local knowledge is key. So, and we agreed that the benefits of seaweed farming for coastal remediation, when you take out the nutrients and they provide oxygen and you do it sustainably, then you can achieve a better environmental status with the seaweed farming, and it also can support fisheries by excluding fishing activities, by integrating the seaweed aquaculture maybe into fish aquaculture. Also, it's not completely sure how how seaweed aquaculture would affect the nurseries, but also if you do it right and if you make it attractive, and seaweed aquaculture can attract tourism, and all above this, you should protect the natural seaweeds. But we know that there are also concerns, or we identified concerns during the workshop, that from different stakeholders, it may be ministries, fisheries, tourism, and the general public, that it looks ugly, so it may not, the coasts and beaches may lose attractiveness, so it's very costly, and there is a spatial competition. And there is also the fear of pests and blooms if you do seaweed aquaculture. So there is a lot to know and to learn, and the foundation, all of this is that you need to know what is in your coastal waters. So some last words about the seaweeds. So seaweeds, there are more than 10,000 species out there in the ocean. And one of the tasks of our project, because I'm a chemist and I wanted also to contribute something to the project, I'm building a database on things that are already in the literature, and we get from other stakeholders during the process. So we have already identified in the literature and algae basis 390 species. And we know that some of them have been harvested and some were cultivated, but it's not completely clear what the situation is now. And local knowledge and also the knowledge about the biodiversity is key. So this morning I just shortly looked again in the internet. So here you see pictures when you look at when you search for Marestotheca senegalensis in the internet, then you find these 3 pictures of an algae, and you think, well, I do not know if this is the same algae. So, but it was to referred as Marestotheca senegalensis in some publications, and in also in journalist work. And then if you dig deeper, then you see this is Marestotheca senegalensis, but this was Marestotheca papulosa, which has been sold from the Senegalese waters to Japan, And here you see it has been dried, and it was a big industry, but I think it has declined during COVID. But I think Wally can later say more about this. And there is in export forum, you still can buy Myristotheca senegalensis, Ulva lactuca, Hypnea musciformis, and another seaweed for export. And but which is the seaweed? So another one, this is also one seaweed, the second most important in Senegal, Hypnea musciformis. These are pictures you find when you look for Hypnea musciformis, and on the right side you see what is exported from Senegal. So, but are these all the same species? So it's very difficult to say that, and this is why later Florian will say something about the barcoding method and the method of CLIMAL-SN. And just to close, so this is the database on Senegalese seaweed, which is currently in production, and we have a lot of publications in already, which is, and we are addressing the usefulness of the algae for food, for feed, for agriculture, for health and cosmetics. We try to identify if something has been said about the algae which have been identified in Senegalese waters, but the identification, I have to say, is over a course of about 70 years. And I think the most recent publications refer to only 90 species. So, but okay, this database will also dig into what is cultivation and what is known about contamination or toxicity of the algae. And last slide is that we intend to look at the potential of the, so we look at the natural seaweeds, but we also look at the potential of seaweed aquaculture for remediation, restoration, and exploitation, which are targets of CLIMALG. Here you see some successful seaweed aquaculture in different areas of the world. So this slide was prepared for the kickoff meeting we had in January, and a lot of Senegalese stakeholders have been there and listened to this. And so I think CLIMAL-SN wants to contribute to the knowledge about diversity, to the 30 million tons which are already globally produced every year in seaweed aquaculture. And and we want to support Senegal to increase the knowledge about this resource, the value, and the possible sustainable use. And with this, I give to Wally, where he wants to show what the project is actually doing. Sorry. Wally?
Okay, I'm here. Thank you, Birgit, for the presentation. I will talk a little bit about what we actually doing and what we plan to do. We work on seaweed, and what is the importance of seaweed I already stated by Birgit. And in Senegal, next slide, please. In Senegal, we have a few information about seaweed. If we try to look about what is exploited, what quantity we have, where it is exploited, and with what means, it's very difficult to find relevant data about that. And it is the same thing about the biodiversity associated to the seaweed, and almost nothing is done. We don't. If we try to find in the literature some publication, we see 8 or something like that, or some papers that not be very high paper. And then this is the next slide, please. This lack of information is a major concern, because in Senegal and West Africa, we plan to establish a marine protected area to preserve marine resources due to their interest on as nursery on export feed, where we found a lot of algae. And at the methodological level, genetic and metagenomic are a relevant tool that is lacking in Senegal, and I think it will be good to have this approach in order to assess the environment. And according that, the CLIMAG project is planned to make a sustainable contribution to the transition of Senegalese coast towards a sustainable development, and we plan to assess the habitat of seaweed and their potential to promote the blue growth, and we plan also to enhance the capacity building of Senegalese people, like conducting research with master, PhD, and technician. And after that, we plan to define a roadmap for policymakers in order to encourage both the cultivation of seaweed and the preservation of national, both the cultivation and the preservation of the natural resources. Okay. Next slide. Yes. Okay. Sorry, I lost my. Okay. Yes. This project plan to increase the knowledge on seaweed, and he also planned to see what impact the seaweed have in fisheries, and also to assess the biodiversity of seaweed. Next. Okay. In Senegal, a marine activity, the maritime economy is something very important, and our government defined a plan in order to develop the aquaculture and seaweed exploitation. But the development of this plan is very difficult, because we have a lot of gap of information about this seaweed, and this project will make a lot of information that will be used. As part of the preface and our project, it was highlighted that the area West Africa side was impacted by global warming, and according to that, we plan to investigate the impact of sea warming on and other stressors like overfishing, marine pollution, and sea level rise on seaweed habitat and their biodiversity. Next slide. One of the main activities of this project is to carry out a taxonomic and genetic inventory of seaweed. We have already carried out some tests on field mission to test our protocol and to see what is the accessible site that we can go, and Florian will talk better on this topic and after my presentation. The other activity already not by Birgit is to study the impact of macroalgae on fisheries, taking account to the local knowledge. Next slide, Birgit. Okay. During our prospection visit, we have discussed with the community of fishermen and algae operator, and I can say yes for your question about if the producer of maize toteca will be locked by COVID-19. Yes, he say the guy is in the right, and he say he have a lot of command, but He cannot employ people to dive and to bring algae for him. And this situation struggle his business. And but also we have a lot of information about where we can find algae and what is the periodicity, and that allow us to better define our farm protocol and what it we try to have us in order to have the better contrast led by the weather seasonality. Before coming to the validation of macroalgae, we also have a day of reflection initiated by the Japanese Corporation on algae, and but the results are not available. We discussed with the director of Seaweed to provide us the document where we can find all data or all information about this. And there is, in some case, retention of information. We cannot have access to some information, and I hope, according his accords, that we will get the information. I hope we will get it. We have also planned to evaluate the interest of exploitation of macroalgae and their use as a feed, as compost, or as methanization. According to this last point, we have built some a partnership with EGZ and GEOMAR in order to supervise a PhD on this algae valorization. Okay. Next slide, please. As the content linked to the pandemic, we have already produced, as stated by Bill Gates, a bibliographic database on species in Senegal, and to our information coming from Senegalese researchers, they say the maximum of species we found here in Senegal are around 250, and that in our database we have 400 species, and that this activity will give us the ability to clarify the situation, and genetic approach will be something additionally to refine the database. For better visibility, we have also built a project website, and we are present on social media like Instagram, Facebook, and we post the relevant publication of the progress on our work. We had, next slide, please. Yes, we have a big difficulty in holding our kickoff meeting. We want to do it in presence physically, in order to exchange with potential stakeholder. That is very difficult, and content about COVID-19 cause that we do it in remote, and we have some researchers present in the meeting. We have a CRODT investigator in Senegal. We have some we have some investigators that was disseminated to along the coast, and they are present, and we have some scientific from university and some representative of institution, and we don't have a lot of fishermen and local partner, and it is very something we lose on this. We also make some visits on this site and have some some discussion with some local partner we found there, and in order to build another approach, a participative approach, in order to make a core design for this work. And yes, we build we define our site according what we already found with the information from fishermen, and we plan to do our first field mission on April, and the last field mission, and the second field mission on July and beginning of August. Okay. Next. For this we will go with our two PhD students that we hired, who is the first one work on taxonomy and genetic. The second one work on seaweed valorization, and we have built a partnership with GEOMAR Center for Marine Biology and ISRA in order to have some supervision and analysis. Next slide. Yes. We also we are in the dynamic to consult all partners and stakeholders during the implementation of our project. And now my last point is that it is not all time easy to validate the partnership until the project are been drafted and signed. When you go to some institution, you try to involve them. They say, yeah, we need an agreement, and defining an agreement with different institutions will take a lot of time. It is very difficult to build, and the director and the responsible of this institution don't respond quickly to your requests, and sometimes it is very difficult to make this partnership sometimes. And but we already have some initiative or project who are very open to work with us. We also have .com and other university and Seagrass project who are working in same topic that the project. Next slide, Brigitte. Okay. Yes, these two institutions, and this is my presentation. I let the floor to Florian.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm a marine biologist, and my role in the CLIMAL-SN project is primarily to provide expertise with DNA barcoding and meta-barcoding to the Senegalese partners. Next slide. If we want to understand how we can manage biodiversity on a coast like the Senegalese coast, we first need to understand where are the diverse habitats, and we also need to have methodologies that allow us to understand how any intervention would affect the biodiversity in these habitats. The traditional approaches to monitor coastal biodiversity are very much based on diving, which is very work intense and costly and time consuming. We could also use more simple approaches by just going out with boats and trying to catch the organisms that are present in environments, but this would be very selective and not comprehensive. Next. So we have two problems, and the first problem here is how well can we identify what we find. Next. This is easy if we are in an environment where we have organisms that are easy to recognize based on morphology, but this is unfortunately very often not the case. And in particular with seaweeds, we often have aspects as the one that is visible in this picture here, where we have a collection of seaweeds that look very similar and are very variable. And then we have to ask the question, is this all the same species, or is it possibly an assimilation, an agglomeration of multiple species that are co-occurring, similar to what Birgit already explained from Aristoteca. Next. An approach that can allow us to handle this identification problem is DNA barcoding, and parts of the CLIMAL-SN project are focused on that. So we want to do DNA barcoding on a selected set of seaweeds. And this is an approach that works like this. We would sample algal individuals and conserve them after we have tried to identify them based on classical methodologies. We would then DNA extract them. After the extraction, we would do an amplification of a selected marker gene. And there are multiple marker genes available that have been developed for different groups of organisms. Unfortunately, there's not one gene that can be universally used for all the organisms. There's one which is TOF-A that is suitable for green seaweeds, and another one, RBCL, is more suitable for red seaweeds, and so on. Anyways, if we have amplified our selected marker gene, we would DNA sequence it, and then we would compare the sequences that we will hopefully obtain with DNA data banks. This would then allow us to verify the results, and in this way we would be able not only to check whether our morphological analysis was correct, but we can then also improve our DNA data bank and feed the result back. So one of our goals is to improve the DNA data bank for Senegalese seaweeds, which will allow us and others in future to identify these seaweeds in a more reliable way. Next slide, please. So with this, we would then be able to handle the identification problem, but how can we solve the resolution problem, which is that we want to typically monitor long coastal sections, or we want to follow the development of seaweed communities and all the organisms that are associated with them over time, for example, over seasons, or we want to compare before and after an intervention. So how can we handle this? Next. The methodology that would allow this could be meta-barcoding of environmental DNA, because this can provide a better resolution. Next. Meta-barcoding is based on the fact that all organisms leave DNA traces in marine environments, and these DNA traces can then be used in order to identify the organisms that were present in the water. So it is possible to collect water samples and then to enrich and to extract DNA from them, amplify the DNA, sequence it, and obtain a large set of different DNA sequences that would represent all the different organisms that were present in the water sample. And one could then compare these sequences again with the DNA data bank and would obtain species lists. The idea behind this is that more abundant organisms would leave more traces, more DNA traces in the water. So more sequences of these more abundant organisms should be detected, which means that the method is perhaps not fully quantitative, but semi-quantitative, because there is a more or less good correlation between DNA abundance and organism abundance. Next, please. This sounds very simple, but as always, there are some problems that have to be resolved. And one problem is that the method is quite sensitive. We are dealing with DNA at very low concentrations, so there is a danger of contamination. We have to prevent contamination, and we need to have negative controls and positive controls and a good replication in order to verify that our results are real. And a second problem is the availability of DNA data banks. Next slide, please. If we have a database that is good, then we can obtain a good result. But if the database is poor, then the result will also be poor, because we would not be able to identify the right set of species from our sequences. There is a fairly good database for commercially fish in West Africa that already exists, which is the AquaGene database, and we intend to use it in our project. We will also contribute to the improvement of the database for seaweed in West Africa. Next slide. Now you may ask yourself, what is the sensitivity of such a method? Obviously, the DNA traces that are in water and that come from organisms can be distributed by currents and wave action. So in which distance would we actually detect an organism? We know from studies that we have conducted in Germany that the detection limit is approximately 100 meters around an organism in summer, but about 1 kilometer around an organism in winter. And we think the difference between these detection limits is due to the fact that we have more strong wind effects in winter. So in winter, wave energy in our area is known to be about 4 times higher than in summer. Now, the Senegalese coast is much more exposed to wave action than the German Baltic Sea, which is very protected. And this means that the detection limit for our methodology in Senegal will probably be even more than 1 kilometer. Next slide. So what this means is that the methodology will not allow us to distinguish on a scale of, let's say, 10 or 100 meters, that is locally, but it will allow us to distinguish on a larger scale among larger coastal sections, which can be a very suitable approach if we have a very long coast like the Senegalese coast. Next. We can identify coastal sections with high and low biodiversity, and we can identify habitats that harbor important species. Next. And we can also monitor seasonal changes, and we can next also monitor the effect of interventions. Next. And that was it. Thank you.
So thank you very much to Birgit, Wally, and Florian. I think it was a great presentation, and it gave us good insights into the project activities and also in the different methods of barcode or meta barcoding. And so for the discussion now, if you have questions, please raise your hand. You can also ask the question in the chat, but it would be great if you could turn on your camera so that we can see each other. It makes it a little bit easier for the discussion. So I think we are a small community and MeerWissen family, and can discuss it in this way. And so, yeah, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. So I know there are other projects like in Induce, for example. Agostino is here, and so maybe there are
questions you have for the region, maybe regarding the political framework, the problems Wally has mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe can I?
Of course, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Likely, as you also, Sven, you mentioned at the beginning, likely the political situation seems to calm down at the moment. We were all very worried, especially because we know the place very well, and it came really, because we've been there almost every year over the last 10 years, and it came really to a great shock that such a nice calm country could suddenly, from one day to the next, turn into that the type of situation. So it was very shock. So I had contact with all my partners in Senegal, and likely everybody is safe and well, and likely the situation is calming down. I guess a lot of this was also contributed, besides the political situation, also because of the challenges that the COVID has imposed. I've heard of job loss over the year and all the other situations that certainly does not help the situation. But anyway, I just wanted to ask a little bit about, how, because probably we are all more or less in the same situation, how the COVID pandemic and all the restrictions related to traveling and so on is impacting. Have you experienced some delays for the project and so on? How, do you have any particular strategy that maybe we could share or we could talk about to help each other? So it's just a practical thing, really. The project sounds really great. Thank you for the overview.
Florian, maybe?
Okay, what can I say? Yes, we have delays, and this has forced us to actually postpone many things that we intended to do. We originally planned to have collected our first sample set by now, and we were not able to get this done. We have postponed it, and we plan now to start in April with it. We had a kick-off meeting that was virtual, which was also, we were able to get it done, but I would say it wasn't perfect due to the technical challenges that come along with it. And I was actually surprised that we were able to nonetheless have so many participants joining us there. It's a challenge. I suppose you are experiencing the same. So I don't think we have a really good strategy for it. Unfortunately, we only just try to handle it.
Wally, can you say how you will do the sampling, or how it affects you?
Oh, yes. For sampling, we have a lot of delay on reagent, on some stuff good we need to have before going to the field mission. And when you buy something, a lot of things come from France, Paris or something, and they have a lot of delay to get your stuff. And but for field mission it is set up, and we will able to do it, to go to the beach and collect some sample. We also plan with each site we visit. We have a small focus group with fishermen or local community, and I think this can be very difficult to do. But if we have some low 2 or 5 people, we can make some discussion, not a big thing, and it is just the same thing we have faced on our kickoff meeting, and it is the way we try to deal with this situation. Yeah.
And we wanted to be there already twice now, but unfortunately, I guess you are locked in Italy. And so we cannot. So, and we are giving now our participant money to Senegal people so that they can do there more. So, and we hope to be at least able from the fall to go, or in summer maybe to help, but I don't know. So how do you make your contact, Augustino?
Well, at the moment, we are basically we have suffered only for one aspect, which was a winter school, an educational activity that we had planned as part of our project, which was scheduled for. I mean, we planned to have that last February, and obviously that could not take place. And at the moment, we want to see, you know, we postpone it because we want to do this in person. We believe there is a great value in doing this in person, because nowadays, you know, students have lots of opportunities for, you know, online courses, and many university offers free courses for many students and so on. Yet there is a value for, you know, in-person interaction with students, especially the way we do. We have been doing these winter schools in Senegal for years now. So, and also, you know, there are all these things, especially when you do a school, which is intensive all day, including practical activities in the afternoon. You know, being on a video all day for an intensive school for 7 days a week is not practical. And people, there are lots of studies now already talking about Zoom fatigue and this type of things. So we really believe that an in-person school with practical activities in the field and showing students, you know, all the ecosystem and so on of their own country in Senegal would be a great opportunity that we don't want to miss. So at the moment we have postponed this activity. This is the main thing we have been suffering because of the pandemic, and we want to see how hopefully the pandemic will recede. Maybe we will have more and more vaccinations into the next months, and maybe travel restrictions will be lifted, and we will be able, maybe after summer, as soon as after summer, I would hope, to do the planned activity. Right? So I hope it's just a you know, a short delay or a delay of some months. This is my hope. Otherwise, we have to see, you know, how we would do that. Regarding our research, I mean, we have been very lucky because we had an intuition when we were submitting the proposal. We have this intuition while we were in Senegal to start collect data, even if we were not sure that the proposal was not funded yet. We had this intuition to in our free time to start collecting data, and we said, you know, we will use them somehow, even if we are not you know, successful with this proposal. So we've been able to collect lots of data in the form of photographs because we are going to create a database of fish morphology to look at functional diversity of those fish who have a commercial value in Senegal. So we have collected hundreds of photographs, and we are now extracting the functional traits from these photographs. We will tell you more when we will have our presentation and within these you know, these seminars. And so we are basically analyzing the data at the moment, and so for that part, for the research part, we did not suffer much about the pandemic, so it's more like the educational component. So we will see. Yeah, that's at the moment our situation.
Thank you. I do have a question because I can't see any questions here in the chat. I do have a question regarding the political framework, maybe to Wally. So what does it need for a framework which has to conserve the seaweed and to use it sustainably? And maybe another question to add there, how do you approach decision makers, political decision makers? Do you have any strategy? Do you have problems regarding approaching and integrating decision makers? And yeah, how is the development regarding this issue?
That's for the your first question is about our institution framework.
I guess it only makes into the political direction and decision makers. So the current context and strategy?
We already set up a plan with national agency, Senegalese aquaculture agency, who build who is the main responsible for policy on aquaculture development. They already be okay to work with us to build a plan and for this project, and to disseminate the result, income result coming from this project. And for this situation, we don't have a problem. And we also have the Ministry of Fisheries who are involved in this project and know what we are doing and what result was available, and he can use it for their report for the ministry in order to convince the ministry in order to build some document where we can collect algae, how we can collect it, and one quantity we can collect. It is the things like that we try to define with our tools. And the first question, if I remember, I forgot.
No, I think it was embedded. I think maybe a wish from your side regarding the political framework. If you could address a wish to the decision makers, how would it look like?
Okay. I think yes. As I say, if we have on board the fishery ministry, national agency, and the seabed directory, and we have a main person that we have to work with them, try to convince them in order to have some impact on policy defined by the authority. We also plan to make some policy brief in order to disseminate it when we have our result. It is our plan.
Okay, and thank you.
The guys. Yes. The guys who's responsible for this action will not here, and he is better than me to give you more insight. It is possible, but yes, we try to do.
Okay, thank you, Wally. We have a question here from Jailson Moura, please.
Mute. Okay, thank you very much for this very beautiful project plan. It's really fantastic and very detailed. And I think that all action that, support the sustainable use of seaweeds in Senegal or elsewhere is going to bring some great results to the economy, to the biodiversity, or anything. And this project for me is going to have a very positive impact on the people, creating jobs and supporting industries and the economy. But I would like to ask you how the local population is gonna, if the consumption of seaweeds is gonna be accepted, is gonna be integrated in the local community by food source or anything. Or it's going to be most focused on the exportation of the products?
Unfortunately, I think it is the way. But me, I can eat algae. No, I have no problem for that. But I don't have any any social work that address this question. Donc, how we can bring the Senegalese population to eat seaweed. It is not their cultural, but I think things are moving. But you see in Senegal some situation, some you know, some, how I say, some restaurant who bring some food with ID. We have some food like fataya. Now we integrated some IG on it, and I think things are moving. But the main issue for local population is to sell it outside the country. And, but if we find another relevant component on seaweed that we can promote his extraction and disseminate it to the population, that can be the thing. And I hear that in the small course we have a promoter who are working on this Carrageenan extraction and or something, and he work on with the groupment of women for that. And if we can improve this kind of initiatives, that will be good.
Thank you, Wally. A last question. We are already over time. Maybe Agostino, a short question at the very end. You are on unmute.
Yes, sorry. Actually, more than a question is like a comment, because just to go back to the policy brief that you discussed before, because in our project we had planned to have a concluding workshop towards the end, where we plan to invite perhaps some members of the National Assembly. I mean the deputies, you know, in the parliament in Senegal, and maybe other stakeholders. Perhaps we could think of doing that jointly. I mean, it's your project, it's our project, it's based in Senegal, and it's the other. I mean, now the name of the lady on the phytoplankton, right? The name of the lady is eluding me, from Avi. There is another project, right, based in Senegal, if I am not mistaken. Right?
Seagrass project.
Not seagrass. Oh, I thought it was phytoplankton. I don't remember now very well, but I think there is at least another one. And maybe we could think about having a workshop, you know, for several stakeholders, where we summarize our results during this workshop. Definitely, we had planned it. We have also allocated some money for that. So perhaps we could do this jointly towards the end, right? That could be an activity for at least for you know spreading our results and starting a dialogue with politicians and stakeholders and responsible people about the various aspects we tackled within the MeerWissen. So perhaps we could keep this in mind and talk more about this later if there is an opportunity.
Okay, this is a good idea, and also we plan to do this meeting at the end of our project. And yes, I'm open for that, and I think Brigitte and also will give their opinion for making this together. Yes.
We'll talk more about it then.
Yeah. So we are currently also in the progress of a project amendment, and hope to be able to make this project longer because of their delays until September 2022. So I wonder if you are in the same time.
Yes, we should run until September 2022. Also our project, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
At the moment, that is the end, right? September 2022 for us as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thinking about giving seaweed lectures. So I wonder if it's a similar approach where you're doing the school and we will be able to travel next year. Maybe there is also synergies more.
Yeah. We have two things. One thing is the school, which is the educational activities for graduate students. That's one thing related to fishery resources and so on. And the other thing is the workshop towards the end, where we plan. So that's additional, where we plan to do more like policy and exchange of knowledge and information and scientific knowledge with the politicians and other stakeholders. So that's additional to the educational activity.
I was referring to the workshops you have with the students.
Yeah, the workshop with the students. Yeah, that
of a joint. So whenever you plan it, maybe you say what you're doing and where, and maybe it's a joint possibility, because definitely we are thinking of going there and giving lectures.
Yeah. At the moment, we hope to do it in 2021 still. That will depend. I mean, we want to meet in before summer. I mean, June, and see what is the situation, you know, with the travel restrictions. So one possibility is to do it still this year as planned, so that we don't have to change contract or anything concerning the budget. And so maybe just postpone it to after summer, September, October, you know. And if that's not possible, to do it at the latest beginning of 2022, like February or March. But that would, I imagine, that would involve some change in the contract, because, you know, we have to probably transfer the budget to the following year and this type of things. But I mean, we will see probably later, you know, what would be our options, and then we will organize accordingly. But definitely, it's a good option also to do this together. Yes, why not?
Great. So we at the very end, so and over the time, and I think that is a great end. So there are a lot of synergies and opportunities for the future, in particular in this region. And so if we can, from MeerWissen, from the Secretariat, if we can support, please let us know. And so we have this community here. And so we can exchange there in the MS Teams community and use these opportunities. And thank you very much from our side to Birgit, Florian, and Wally for the great presentations and for these insights into the Seaweed CLIMAG project. And yeah, if you have any comments and would like to know more about CLIMAG, please use our MeerWissen community. So there you can ask the questions and use the synergies and connect to each other. We plan to share the recordings and within the news for the upcoming days on the website, on the MeerWissen website, and we'll share it with you. Also in the MS Teams community. And before we close the webinar, we would also like to mention that we will are preparing a podcast series about relevant MeerWissen topics and its projects. And Hauke Kegler and Paul Tudor from Leibniz Center for Tropical Research, Marine Research, will be responsible for this podcast. And so maybe Hauke, 1-2 words regarding this, and then we will close here.
Yeah, sure. So we have a first episode coming up in the end of March with the FIDEA project. And I think the first season will cover 8 episodes. So whenever you're interested in being hosted and promoted by Paul and me, then write me an email, and we're gonna be happy to set up this. But a focus will also be on the partners in our partner countries, because as you can see here, there's a very strong representation of the German partners, and I think for the podcast it would also be nice to give our local partners a voice from the region, so they get some spotlight as well. So if you know somebody from your project who's keen on being on a podcast, write to me, Sven, or Paul, and yeah, we can make it happen. Thanks.
Thank you, Hauke. So we will let you know more about it during the next couple of weeks. And we also will continue our MeerWissen webinar series Maybe the next one will be in use. We will discuss it, but we will keep you updated as soon as we have scheduled the next webinar. So for scheduling it, we have a schedule on the MS Teams or in the community, MS Teams community. And yeah, please sign up there and we will send out the invitation. And yeah, that's it for today. Thank you very much. And thank you also for attending the webinar. And so we hope to see you during our next webinar, hopefully coming soon. And of course, stay healthy. Thank you.